Marcus Webb had always preferred the company of stars to people. At 34, he'd carved out a peaceful existence as an astronomy professor, spending his days teaching at the local university and his nights in the observatory he'd built behind his remote cabin. The isolation suited him perfectly, no neighbors for miles, just rolling hills, dense forest, and the clearest night sky he'd ever seen. That Tuesday evening had been like countless others. After grading papers and preparing lectures about distant galaxies, Marcus settled into his usual routine. He heated up leftover pasta, poured himself a glass of red wine, and reviewed his observation notes from the previous night. A meteor shower was predicted for the weekend, and he wanted to ensure his equipment was perfectly calibrated. The cabin was modest but comfortable, thick wooden walls that kept out both the cold and the noise of civilization. Marcus had inherited it from his grandfather, an eccentric inventor who'd shared his love of solitude and celestial phenomena. Most of the original furnishings remained, giving the place a timeless quality that Marcus found comforting around 11:30. As he was preparing for bed, Marcus heard something that made him freeze. 3 distinct knocks echoed through the cabin, not the random sounds of wind or settling wood, but deliberate rhythmic raps against his front door. His heart rate quickened. In the 5 years he'd lived here, no one had ever visited unannounced. Especially not at this hour. Marcus approached the door cautiously, his bare feet silent on the cold hardwood floor. He peered through the small window beside the entrance, but the porch light cast strange shadows that made it difficult to see. Clearly, all he could make out was a figure, definitely human-shaped, but oddly still. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice steadier than he felt. "Please," came a voice from the other side, feminine, soft but carrying an urgency that made his chest tighten. "I need your help. I'm lost, and I'm hurt." Marcus hesitated. Every instinct told him to be careful, but the desperation in the woman's voice was unmistakable. He unlocked the heavy wooden door and opened it slowly, keeping the security chain engaged. What he saw made no sense. Standing on his porch was a woman who appeared to be in her late 20s, with shoulder-length silver hair that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. Her skin had an unusual, pale luminescence, almost like moonlight-made flesh. But what shocked Marcus most was that she was completely naked, arms wrapped around herself for warmth, and her eyes were unlike anything he'd ever seen. They were large and dark, but with flecks of light that seemed to move like stars. "Please," she said again, and Marcus noticed that her voice had a musical quality, almost like she was speaking in harmonics. "My name is Nix. I know this seems impossible, but I'm not from here, not from Earth, and I desperately need your help." Marcus stood frozen, his rational mind warring with what his eyes were telling him. The woman Nix was clearly in distress, shivering in the cool night air, but her story was obviously impossible. But something about her presence felt otherworldly in a way that made his skin prickle with recognition. "You're going to think I'm insane," Nix continued, her unusual eyes pleading with him. "But my species is dying, and you might be the only one who can help us survive." Against every rational thought in his head, Marcus found himself removing the security chain and opening the door wider. Whatever was happening, whoever this woman really was, she needed help. And despite the impossibility of her claims, some deep part of him, the part that spent every night searching the stars for signs of life, whispered that maybe, just maybe, she was telling the truth. Marcus wrapped his heavy winter coat around Nix's shoulders, trying to process what was happening as he led her inside. She moved with an unusual grace, her bare feet seeming to barely touch the floor. In the warm light of his living room, her otherworldly appearance became even more pronounced. Her skin held that same luminescent quality. When she turned her head, he caught glimpses of what looked like faint markings along her neck. "Thank you," she said, settling onto his couch and pulling the coat tighter around herself. "I know how this must look. Naked stranger appearing at your door in the middle of nowhere, claiming to be an alien. But Marcus, yes, I know your name. I've been watching your work for months." Marcus sat heavily in his armchair, maintaining distance but unable to look away. "Watching my work? How do you even know who I am?" Nix's dark eyes seemed to sparkle. As she spoke, You published a paper last year about the possibility of life in the Kepler system. Your theories about atmospheric composition and biological adaptation were remarkably accurate. My people, ... we come from Kepler 442b. The specificity of her reference made Marcus's breath catch. His paper had been largely ignored by the mainstream scientific community, dismissed as too speculative. Yet this strange woman was discussing it as if she'd lived it. Even if I believed you, Marcus said carefully, why are you here? Why me? Nyx's expression grew somber, and she looked down at her hands. My species, the Valkyrie, were facing extinction. Not from war or disaster, but from our own evolution. We've become too ... perfect. Our genetic diversity has narrowed to the point where we can no longer reproduce successfully. Each generation produces fewer children, and those who are born are often too weak to survive. She paused, seeming to gather courage for what came next. Our scientists believe that introducing genetic material from a compatible species, humans, might restore our fertility. But the process is ... complex. It requires very specific conditions and timing. Marcus felt his face flush as the implications became clear. You're asking me too? I'm asking you to help save my entire civilization, Nyx interrupted, meeting his gaze directly. I know it sounds insane. I know you have no reason to believe me or trust me. But Marcus, in approximately 4 hours, my body will enter a biological state that occurs only once every few Earth years. If I don't conceive during this window, I'll never have another chance. Marcus stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. This is crazy. This is absolutely insane. People don't just show up claiming to be aliens who need to reproduce to save their species. You're right, Nyx said quietly. It is insane, but look at me, Marcus. Really look at me. Have you ever seen a human being who looks like I do, moves like I do, knows things about your research that were never published? Despite himself, Marcus found his scientific curiosity overriding his skepticism. She was right. Everything about her was subtly wrong for a human. Her proportions were slightly off, her movements too fluid, her eyes too large. There were other things. The way shadows seemed to bend around her, how the temperature in the room had risen since she'd arrived, the faint humming sound that seemed to emanate from her presence. Even if you are what you claim to be, Marcus said, why should I believe your story about reproduction? How do I know this isn't some elaborate trick? Nyx stood up slowly, letting the coat fall away from her shoulders. Marcus tried not to look, but he couldn't help noticing that her body, while humanoid, had subtle differences. Skin that seemed to glow from within, proportions that were beautiful but somehow alien. Because, she said, extending her hand toward him, I can prove it. When Marcus hesitantly took her hand, a jolt of energy passed between them. Suddenly his mind filled with images, vast cities of crystal and light, beings that looked like Nyx moving through impossible architecture, and most disturbing of all, empty nurseries and the overwhelming sense of a civilization slowly dying. Marcus jerked his hand away, stumbling backward. What did you just do to me? I shared my memories, Nyx said softly. It's one of our abilities. What you saw, that's my world, Marcus. That's what we're trying to save. As Marcus struggled to process what had just happened, he realized that his carefully ordered world had just shattered completely. And whether Nyx was truly an alien or something else entirely, one thing was clear. This night would change everything. Marcus stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. This is crazy. This is absolutely insane. People don't just show up claiming to be aliens who need to reproduce to save their species. You're right, Nyx said quietly. It's insane. But look at me, Marcus. Really look at me. Have you ever seen a human being who looks like I do? Who moves like I do? Who knows things about your research that were never published? Despite himself, Marcus found his scientific curiosity overriding his skepticism. She was right. Everything about her was subtly wrong for a human. Her proportions were slightly off, her movements too fluid, her eyes too large. And there were other things. The way shadows seemed to bend around her. How the temperature in the room had risen since she'd arrived, the faint humming sound that seemed to emanate from her presence. "Even if you are what you claim to be," Marcus said, "why should I believe your story about reproduction? How do I know this isn't some elaborate trick?" Nyx stood up slowly, letting the coat fall away from her shoulders. Marcus tried not to look, but he couldn't help noticing that her body, while humanoid, had subtle differences: skin that seemed to glow from within, proportions that were beautiful but somehow alien, because she said, extending her hand toward him, "I can prove it." When Marcus hesitantly took her hand, a jolt of energy passed between them. Suddenly his mind filled with images: vast cities of crystal and light, beings that looked like Nyx moving through impossible architecture, and most disturbing of all, empty nurseries and the overwhelming sense of a civilization slowly dying. Marcus jerked his hand away, stumbling backward. "What did you just do to me?" "I shared my memories," Nyx said softly. "It's one of our abilities." "What you saw, that's my world, Marcus. That's what we're trying to save." As Marcus struggled to process what had just happened, he realized that his carefully ordered world had just shattered completely. Whether Nyx was truly an alien or something else entirely, one thing was clear: this night would change everything. Part 3. The choice. Marcus paced his kitchen, trying to make sense of everything while Nyx remained in his living room. The images she'd shared were still vivid in his mind, too detailed and alien to be fabricated. But accepting their reality meant accepting that his entire understanding of the universe had just been turned upside down. A sharp knock at his door made them both freeze. Marcus checked his watch to 47 a.m. Who could possibly be visiting at this hour? "Dr. Webb," came a voice from outside. "This is Dr. Helena Cross from the Xenobiological Research Institute. I need to speak with you urgently about your visitor." Eyes went wide with panic. "They found me," she whispered. "I was hoping to have more time before." "Before what?" Marcus demanded. But another knock interrupted him. "Dr. Webb, I know this is highly unusual, but lives are at stake. Please, I have information about the Valkyrie situation that you need to hear." Marcus looked between Nyx and the door, his mind reeling. How does she know about? "Please, Doctor," Cross called out. "I'm not here to harm anyone. I'm here to help verify what you're being told." Against his better judgment, Marcus opened the door to find a woman in her 50s with graying hair and intelligent green eyes. She wore a long coat over what appeared to be hastily thrown-in clothes and carried a metal briefcase that looked distinctly high-tech. "Dr. Cross," she said, extending her hand. "I apologize for the intrusion, but we've been monitoring extraterrestrial activity in this region. When our sensors detected a Valkyrie biosignature at your location, I came as quickly as I could." Marcus's head spun, monitoring extraterrestrial activity. Valkyrie biosignature. What kind of organization do you work for? Dr. Cross glanced past him to where Nyx sat. It's the kind that's been preparing for this day for decades. "May I come in?" "What I have to tell you both is extremely time-sensitive." Once inside, Dr. Cross opened her briefcase and removed what looked like a sophisticated scanning device. She pointed it at Nyx, and it began emitting soft beeping sounds. "Confirmed Valkyrie physiology," Dr. Cross announced, reading from the device's display. "Elevated bioelectrical activity consistent with reproductive preparation phase. Genetic compatibility markers are remarkable." "You're scanning me without my permission," Nyx said, but she didn't move to stop the process. "I'm trying to save your species, and possibly ours as well," Dr. Cross replied. "Dr. Webb, everything she's told you is accurate. The Valkyrie are indeed facing extinction, and human genetic material does offer a potential solution. But there are complications she hasn't mentioned." Marcus sank into his chair. "What kind of complications?" Dr. Cross set down her scanner and looked directly at him. "Successful, the resulting offspring won't be entirely human or entirely Valkyrie. They'll be something new, potentially more advanced than either parent species. The implications for both civilizations are enormous." "You're talking about creating a hybrid species?" Marcus asked. "We're talking about evolution on a scale that's never been attempted," Dr. Cross confirmed. "The children born from such unions would likely possess enhanced cognitive abilities, extended lifespans, and capabilities we can barely imagine." They could represent the next step in intelligent life. Nix stood up, her agitation growing. Which is why my people chose someone like Marcus. His scientific background, his genetic profile, his isolation, everything makes him an ideal candidate. For this experiment? Experiment. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Is that all this is to you? Nix's expression softened. It started that way, she admitted. But spending months observing you, learning about your work, your character, it became something more. I came to respect you, and eventually to care about you as an individual. Dr. Cross checked her watch. We have less than 3 hours before the window closes. Dr. Webb, I need to be completely honest with you about what you're being asked to do. This isn't just about helping one woman, or even one species. This decision could alter the course of life in the galaxy. Aquest looked between the two women, one claiming to be an alien in desperate need, the other a scientist offering verification of an impossible situation. Everything in his rational mind screamed that this had to be an elaborate hoax, but the evidence was becoming overwhelming. If I say yes, Marcus said quietly, what happens to any children that result? They would be raised understanding both heritages, Nick said.
Oh.
Prepared to serve as bridges between our worlds. And if I say no? Dr. Cross and Nix exchanged glances. Then the Velkari face extinction, Dr. Cross said, and humanity loses the chance to take its next evolutionary leap. Marcus realized that in the span of a few hours, he'd gone from a quiet professor to someone being asked to make a decision that could reshape the future of intelligent life. The weight of that responsibility was almost crushing, but as he looked into Nix's unusual eyes, he began to understand that some choices transcend personal comfort and enter the realm of cosmic significance. Just as Marcus opened his mouth to respond, the sound of vehicles approaching shattered the night's silence. Through his window, he could see the glow of headlights cutting through the darkness, followed by the unmistakable rumble of multiple engines. No, Dr. Cross whispered, her face draining of color. They weren't supposed to find us this quickly. Who? Marcus demanded, but Nix was already moving toward the back of the cabin with inhuman speed. Federal agents, Dr. Cross explained hurriedly, pulling equipment from her briefcase. There are factions within the government that want to weaponize any alien contact. They've been tracking my research. The vehicles stopped outside and through the window. Marcus could see figures in dark clothing taking positions around his cabin. A powerful spotlight suddenly illuminated his front porch, and a voice boomed through a megaphone.
This is Agent
Torres with the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs. The building is surrounded. We need all occupants to exit with their hands visible. Marcus felt his world spinning out of control. Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs. That's a real thing. Unfortunately, yes, Dr. Cross said, typing rapidly on a device. And they're not here to facilitate peaceful contact. Agent Torres has been pushing for aggressive containment protocols for any alien visitors. Nix reappeared from the back room, now wearing some of Marcus's clothes. I won't let them capture me, she said, her eyes beginning to glow with an inner light. My people have contingency plans for this scenario. What kind of contingency plans? Marcus asked. But the answer came in the form of a low humming sound that began to vibrate through the cabin walls. Outside, shouts of confusion erupted from the agents as the air itself seemed to shimmer. Marcus watched in amazement as what looked like heat distortion began to ripple across his property, and the agent's equipment started malfunctioning. Valkyrie technology, Dr. Cross explained. She's calling for extraction. Agent Torres's voice cut through the chaos via megaphone. Hey, Dr. Cross, we know you're in there. You're in violation of Protocol 7 by engaging in unauthorized alien contact. Render the extraterrestrial subject immediately. Protocol 7? Marcus turned to Dr. Cross. How long has the government known about aliens? Officially, they don't, she replied. Unofficially, there's been a shadow department preparing for extraterrestrial contact for decades. Torres believes any alien presence represents a potential threat that must be contained or eliminated. The humming grew louder, and Marcus could see strange lights beginning to appear in the sky above his cabin. Whatever Nix had activated was working. Several of the agents outside were backing away from the building, their equipment sparking and failing. "I have to go," Nick said, turning to Marcus with regret in her otherworldly eyes. "My ship will be here in minutes, but I want you to know this wasn't supposed to happen like this." "What about your mission?" Marcus asked. "What about saving your species?" Nick's expression grew determined. "There will be other opportunities, other candidates. But not if I'm captured and dissected in some government facility." Agent Torres's voice boomed again. "Dr. Webb, you're harboring a potentially dangerous alien entity. For your own safety and national security, you need to cooperate with our investigation." Dr. Cross grabbed Marcus's arm. "There's something you need to understand. If they take Nyx, they won't just study her, they'll reverse engineer her technology, weaponize it. And if they find out about the reproductive compatibility, they'll want to create hybrid soldiers under government control." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The choice wasn't just about helping one alien woman anymore. It was about preventing his government from turning first contact into a military advantage. Through his window, Marcus could see a craft materializing in the sky above his cabin's leak, silent and unlike anything human technology could produce. Nyx moved toward the door, but Agent Torres's voice stopped her. "We have snipers positioned around the perimeter. Any attempt to leave the building will be met with force." Marcus realized that in the span of hours, his quiet cabin had become ground zero for what could be humanity's first official alien contact door, its first act of interstellar aggression. The weight of the moment pressed down on him as he understood that whatever happened next would echo through history. Nyx looked at him one final time. "Whatever you choose to do after I'm gone, remember that not all humans have to be like them," she said, nodding toward the agents outside. "Some of you are capable of something better." As the alien craft descended and the federal agents prepared for confrontation, Marcus faced a decision that went far beyond personal choice. He was about to determine the nature of humanity's first steps into a larger universe. 20 years had passed since that extraordinary night, and Dr. Marcus Webb had learned to live with the weight of secrets that could reshape human understanding of the universe. He never spoke publicly about what had happened, but the memory of Nyx and the choices made that evening had fundamentally changed him. The government had covered up the incident, classifying everything under levels of secrecy that didn't officially exist. Dr. Cross had disappeared into a witness protection program. Agent Torres had been quietly reassigned to a desk job after. The alien craft's departure had left his entire operation looking like an exercise in incompetence. Marcus had returned to his teaching and research, but with a new perspective that infused his work with possibilities his students couldn't imagine. He'd moved from the remote cabin to a house in town, where he'd met and married a fellow astronomy professor named Claire. They'd built a good life together, though Marcus often caught himself scanning the night sky, wondering if he'd ever see Nyx again. That question was answered on a Tuesday evening in spring when his 19-year-old daughter Zara came home from her first year of college with news that made his blood run cold and his heart soar simultaneously. "Dad, we need to talk," Zara said, settling onto the couch in their living room. Her appearance had always been slightly unusual, taller than average, with an intelligence that bordered on unsettling and eyes that seemed to hold depths that shouldn't exist in someone so young. Claire had always attributed these traits to Marcus's academic genes, never questioning why their daughter seemed to grasp complex concepts with such ease. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" Marcus asked, though something in Zara's expression told him this wasn't going to be an ordinary father-daughter conversation. Zara took a deep breath, and when she looked up at him, her eyes held a familiar, star-like quality that made Marcus's chest tighten. "A woman came to see me at school last week. She said her name was Nyx, and that you would understand what that means." Marcus felt the world tilt around him. "What did she tell you?" "She told me the truth about what I am," Zara said quietly. "About why I've always felt different, why I can do things other people can't, why I sometimes dream of places that look nothing like Earth." Over the next hour, Zara revealed abilities that she'd been hiding her entire life. Enhanced cognitive processing that allowed her to solve complex problems in minutes rather than hours. An intuitive understanding of technological systems that bordered on the supernatural, and most remarkably, the ability to sense emotional states and intentions. In others, she explained about the Valkyrie, Zara continued, and about the choice you made that night. She said, I'm part of something called the Bridge Generation Hybrids, who were born to help both species evolve. Marcus sat in stunned silence as his daughter, who he now realized was far more than human, continued her explanation. There are others like me, Dad, children born from similar encounters over the past 2 decades. We've been finding each other, learning about our heritage, preparing for something Nix calls the Great Convergence. What kind of convergence? Marcus asked, though part of him was afraid of the answer. Zara's expression grew serious. First, contact, but done right this time. Not with government agents and military protocols, but with understanding and cooperation. The Valkyrie have been watching, waiting to see if humanity is ready for a larger role in the galactic community. Paused, studying her father's face. Nix wanted me to tell you that your choice that night, to let her go rather than allow the government to capture her, proved that humans are capable of making decisions based on wisdom rather than fear. It's why the Bridge Generation exists. Marcus felt tears forming as he realized that the impossible night 20 years ago had been just the beginning of something far more significant. His daughter wasn't just the product of an extraordinary encounter. She was part of humanity's evolution towards something greater. So what happens now? He asked. Zara smiled, and for a moment, she looked exactly like Nix had in the soft light of his cabin all those years ago. Now we prepare to introduce our 2 worlds properly, and Dad. She took his hand and he felt that same electric connection he'd experienced with Nix. Thank you for making the choice that gave me life. Both of my species are going to be proud of what we've become. As Marcus embraced his remarkable daughter, he understood that his quiet life as an astronomy professor had been preparation for becoming the father of someone who would help bridge the gap between Earth and the stars.